Let it fill up as we getting ready. I remember after doing the work. Still do the work, because the work's ongoing with your shadow work, doing this after you integrate it's to build. And I remember my first integration. I remember my first deaths. I remember my first escapes. And I remember getting to these spaces with myself with these internal battles. We always think about these internal battles. And I remember I would be changing things. I would be like redoing things and changing shit. And where I was triggered. Hell no, that's not good. I realized that when I was getting triggered, I had to find the root to the trigger. I had to find out why I was getting triggered, why I was still getting triggered, and why things were still bothering me. I remember I got past the stage of my intuition challenging me. My intuition still challenges me at times for new spaces. And it made me think about all of the internal conflicts and going back through the reflections. And I talked about it a little bit on Wednesday during the God Hour show. And it was understanding the levels of intuition, my instincts, intuition, and enlightenment, and how to get to the path of using my intuition and tapping into those levels of enlightenment, or tapping into those higher aspects of myself. And I realized that my instincts created the identities. Our instincts create our identities. The instinct to survive, the instinct to try, the instinct of what you became into that sense of yourself to create your space, and literally destroying all of that. And what people really don't understand about when you're getting deep into your shadow work is you're no longer avoiding the things that are coming to the surface. You have set the tone, you have stated the decree that you are stepping into this space, but there's things that you got to let go of first. There's things that you have to let go of first before you even go through that doorway that is daath, or through that death, to accept your path of death. Because we've been getting into, everything you take with you is the shit that you're going to face. So if you got a lot of surface level shit that you're not willing to let go of, when you hear somebody say everything, it literally means everything. That means everything goes into question. That means everything goes into question. Everything goes into assessment. A lot of times with your soul contracts, and the one thing we're going to get into tonight is your soul contract that you have in this current cycle, your current cycle that you're going through, it has clauses in it based on your old aspects of yourself, based on your last cycles here, last life, Akashic records, going back through those records. There's things that are locked within that are in the clauses in your shit now. A lot of you, this is how we understand the karmic debt aspect. You have family members, you got friends, in this life you got a baby mother, in this life you got a baby father, in this life you got, but all of these people, greetings. But in these levels of yourself, all of these are clauses to that war or those battles that you did not successfully win last time. Everything that you're experiencing that makes your life seem at ease and you think that you wonder why it's not working anymore, that shit that you've already mastered. Those things are in the realm of your intuition or in your higher aspects. So when it comes to a lot of things, you wondering why did I have such a hard life? Or why were the first years of my life so hard? Or why did I have to go through all this? It was all a part of your contract. That abundance you're looking for, that abundance you're looking for, that all of these aspects that you're looking for, they're going to be in the higher aspects of yourself. They're outside of this predestination of your instincts. There's certain things you're not going to be able to tap into because you're still stuck in that survival mode. Because remember, as I've said this before, your humility and your intuition are only found in the darkness. Your humility and your intuition and your integrity and your intents are only set in the darkness. You can't set an intent in the light. A lot of us, when we set in our intentions, we don't understand that we're projecting this aspect of what we want it to look like. Therefore, it becomes the light. Everything in the light is burned out, is dead. It's a projection. So as we're getting deeper into ourselves with the aspects of understanding our shadow work and the meaning of purging, nothing is going to remain the same. You start doing your work, nothing remains the same. Everything that you once saw and the things that you used to react to, you're going to be trained. You're learning to become aware of what you saw to understand it. That's why whenever we're talking about when you approach a situation after you already approached it and it's a different person and you learn how to react, that emotional maturity, that's an aspect of your intuition. You just know. That's you just coming into that knowing. You know how to navigate now. You know you're in a different level of accepting yourself. But you got to go through you got to deal with these internal conflicts. All of that shit comes to the surface for a reason. You're taking your mindset. We're taking our mindsets out of what you were expecting, what you wanted, what you needed, because none of that shit mattered. All of that was based in when you set that seed and the things grew from that seed, or when we look at the Kabbalah or the tree of light, all of that's projections. All of that's the projections based on expression, personalities, all of these aspects. When you look at the tree of life, that shit's actually, you go down. You came down into your descent to observe yourself in this space, to observe the lessons that you came here to learn. Everything down here is a different aspect of you learning an aspect of yourself. We can't keep saying that, oh my God, it's an illusion. Oh my God, none of this is real. But the moment that you get upset, the moment that you get triggered, I thought it wasn't real. What is the why behind you got upset with that? It's rooted inside of you. This is an aspect that's rooted inside of you. When I ask people, do you really care about yourself? What is your self-care routine? What is your self-care routine? What are your daily disciplines? And then I've had people say, well, I get up, I do this, and do this. They have their routines. I'm like, then I asked them another question. I said, what are your daily routines? Then I asked the next question. Do you feel like you're doing what you want, or are you doing what you can? I asked them, do you feel like you're doing what you want, or are you doing what you can? They said, I do what I want. I'll be like, okay, you're doing what you want. Congrats. Okay, you're doing what you want. Cool. All right. We go deeper into the questions. And then we cycle back around to the top question. I was like, and then I asked, what makes you have the ability to do what you want? Well, I have this many degrees. I went to school for this. I'm this at my job. I'm a manager. I'm a mother. I'm a father. I'm taking care of my family. I'm taking care of my parents. So I'm trying to be the best daughter or the best son. And then I always ask the next question, what are you without any of those titles? What are you without any of those titles that you are using? Without those titles, would you still be able to be and do what you want? This is the aspects of war. This is how war is declared in the mind. This is how we understand that war is declared in the mind. For the most of us in our identities, as a mother, father, sister, brother, teacher, whatever, if you take this title on first, you're basically just a mercenary. Think about your job. Think about everything that you've done. You usually done your shit based, you get paid yourself, you've given your emotions or your energy to the highest bidder. Fuck the standard. Fuck what you become. All you were thinking about was the things that you were acquiring while you were inside of the space. All because it was based on your base instinct to survive, your urge to survive, your urges to survive. But why are your urges there to survive in the first place? We're not talking about the furthest of the external aspect, the white man and all of these things. We're talking about for you, defined for you, your because and your why. That's your conflict. That's you. That's your conflict. Until you deal with those aspects, until we deal with these aspects, we're going to get into them tonight. Until you deal with these aspects, you're only coinciding with your trauma. I've been getting to that all week. You've been coinciding with your trauma. Your definition of what you want, your definition of what you want in a man, your definition of what you want in a woman, your definitions that you want to hold on so dearly to keep your identity intact. Then you get to the next level when you start actually doing some minor subsurface self-care work. Then you get a little bit deeper, then you realize how outdated or the context of what you thought that you wanted no longer fits that old program based in your instinct just to survive. It's a different key when I really started realizing I had to change my instincts. Because at first I was like, just like almost anything else, I was like, you can't change your instincts. That was like, wait, if I'm vibrating at a different frequency and I'm no longer thinking about, and I no longer need and want anything, then that would mean I no longer need to have the base instinct to survive. I'm not saying that you won't be able to thrive. I'm saying it from a space of, if I don't need or want anything, I really understand what I am. I know what the fuck I am. I'm doing my internal work. Then why wouldn't my instincts change? My basic patterns based on how I'm stimulated and how I move throughout a space. If I elevate myself to another level to tap into the higher realms, it means I go through that doorway of daath and I take that trip up the tree of knowledge of the Quillos. And I take my trip up the tree of knowledge and I'm acknowledging the things that gave me my personalities, that gave me my expressions, that had me moving in a certain light. Then as I'm moving up, as I'm going down, the first thing that I'm going to battle is going to be my identities or the basis of my identities or my instincts. I was surviving as the good son. I was surviving as the good boyfriend in the relationship. I was surviving as these aspects. But none of these aspects were truly me. Because I knew they weren't truly me. Because before I went in, I would be one way. But because of my traumas, I didn't realize that I was only becoming something to fit inside of that space. This goes deep into the aspects. We're going to get into correspondence, the law of correspondence, and understanding your corresponding triggers and how they correspond into your life. Tonight we're going to be getting into the sexual trauma. We're going to be getting very deep into sexual trauma, the builds of sexual trauma, understanding the aspects of sexual abuse, because sexual abuse is the combination of the emotional, the combination of the physical, the combination of the emotional, the combination of the spiritual, the combination of the verbal, and all of the aspects of all the abuses in one. It all comes sync together, because we have to understand that we have to take ourselves out of this mindset of sexual abuse only being in the most physical of content, because if we change the definition and we understand the sexual abuse is sacred energy exchange, then that means anytime my energy is violated, that means it would technically be of sexual abuse. This is how we start understanding these corresponding figures of when we're looking at shit that happens in our space and why we feel some type of way about it, even though we may have never experienced it. But within our space, at a point in time, in one of our timelines, we had that experience. That's the type of shit that we get deep into. That's the type when we're doing the therapy and we're doing the sessions. That's the type of thing. This is the depths that we go into. We're not just talking about this current state. We're talking about every state that you ever were in, pulling up all of this shit, because that's what comes up anyway. When you go into that death, you're not just killing away the identities of this current cycle. You're actively seeking every stream of thought and personality and identity that you've ever created. Every thought that you've ever had has created a personality in some way, shape, or form. Just because you did not act it out does not mean that stream or that personality does not exist in another space. I'm gonna give you a nice little simple dialogue of it based on stuck on being in that frequency. You ever thought about your friendships? You ever thought about your family, your friendships, the people that you see? The reasons that they bother you, the reason that certain motherfuckers bother you. Have you ever really took a look at from your seating in the position that you're in? Have you ever really looked in the seated position and looked at from you, the mind being all and everything being mental, and really taking the creation story of the brown man, the yellow man, the brown man, the red man, the yellow man, and the white man, these archetypes of light, and creating these aspects? Have you ever really thought, like, going deeper into what it would actually be? Because remember, we keep going deeper within. That's that creation story, the creation of the white man, the creation of all these aspects. You created all of that shit. And in the depths of you really understanding yourself, these stories, these aspects that we now read, these texts that we bring in, all of that is synthesized into your single self of what you created. The expansion of how you expand and how you create. Every cycle that you've been through, you've been a different aspect of you in a different shape or form, whether it was in the masculine or in the feminine archetype. Some of you came down here as a female bird. Some of you came down here as wolves, and you remember these cycles of your life. At least I have. But now you're going into this space with yourself and you're like, wait, This is the true weight that people have avoided when it comes to doing their work. That's what you're really, that's going deeper into what you're actually avoiding to bring to the surface. So to keep it in this space as we build, think about everything coming to the surface and you now having to deal with it. There's so many aspects of your life that you don't even realize that in owning your story is taking you outside of bad and good. Remember, we're getting out of bad and good, positive and negative. There's positive shit that you've done. There was positive things that happened in your life that if you go back to now, they wouldn't make sense. Give you an example. Simple example. You sucked on your mom's tit when you were a child to get the nutrients from your mother. You cannot go at the age you are now and go suck back on your mother's tit. It was something positive, but it no longer serves you a purpose. When we look at the aspects of the negative things that happened in your life, when you look at the negative shit that happened in your life, your negative experiences, you got to own all of them. Because at a point in time, the things that my pops has said to me in that space, they were very negative to a young Carlos. They were very negative to me. They hurt, they scarred, they left wounds. But when I go back down into acknowledging myself and learning myself in the darkness, those very scars, those very negatives actually serve me a purpose. All of this shit switches. What we get stuck in a lot of times when it comes to us doing our work is releasing from the identity that we created, that very identity you created. When it comes into something that's like when we get into the aspects of the abuse that you faced when you were younger, we're going to start with the aspects of we'll use the aspects of sexual abuse. You went through a sexual traumatic experience when you were younger. Depending on who it was, somebody close to you, male, like man, woman, whoever it was, you developed an unforeseen channel of conflicts in your life. We often talk about women and their sexual traumas and their experiences and them hating, and it's not even hatred. It's not even hatred. Get that out of your mind. It's not even a hatred. If you stay in it's all based in fear. It's actually a threat. Some are walking around now with those sexual traumas, and you're actually threatened by anything else. Whether it was what happened to you when you were younger, or even if you didn't even know it was a sexual trauma, for some in the male aspect, we don't even think that it's trauma having the things that we went through. Like me, I lost my virginity when I was 13 to my babysitter. I didn't know that it was an actual traumatic experience, because to me, in that state, it was very positive. But if I go tell that story to somebody, it's not so positive. They're like, oh my God, that shit happened to you? You didn't understand that this happened to you? Because I built an entire identity based on that. The way that I approached women, the way that I talked, the way that I acted. I didn't know where it was rooted in. It just became another part of my instincts. That ID, that identity, the first identity. Here's the craziest thing about the first identity. When you come down, you ain't got no identity. Think about half of the shit you did when you were little that you wouldn't even think about doing now. Think about half of the things you did when you were a child that if you look back at it now, you think that shit, you were looking like yourself, like you're crazy. Because you didn't come down here with an identity. You didn't come down here. You came down here as that seed, and that identity was meant to protect you as you went through that first identity, the ID. As you evolved, your instincts were created based on that identity. When you got to that age, when you came into this space of your age where you're at now, I'm gonna give you something trippy about your superego. Your superego is the very environment in which you stand in. Your superego is the very environment in which your world that you have created stands in. This thing that you cannot pierce. When we look at the planets, you look at Earth, and they talk about the magnetosphere, that layer that you can't escape. That is the external version of your superego. Your superego was created based on the identity and the instincts, your basic patterns of survival, to create within your world and within your space. Gonna give it to you, make it real trippy. I remember my identity to survive. So I became a manager. I tried to maintain the best in relationships, tried to maintain all of these aspects. So I was stuck within that space. So my superego or my environment matched where I was at. So as long as I was in survival mode, the job that I worked was the job that I needed to work. The car that I needed to get was the car that I needed to get. The relationship that I was in, everything was predetermined based on my instincts. Everything's predetermined based on your instincts. Everything that you tapping into is based on your instincts. You want something different, you have to acknowledge your instincts. Your instincts are based in your patterns that created by your behaviors that give your identities or your behaviors or your personalities through the emotional requisites of what you went through. That's why when you have conversations with people, and you're now emitting at a certain level of light with yourself, all they can use is what they see of their universe, what they see, what they have used based on survival, their survival instinct. So yes, that degree that you got is a survival instinct. This is not telling you that the degree is bad, your education wasn't meant for something, don't get the education. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, do not use that as a complex to build the philosophy for which your identity survives. When I walk into a space, if I walked into a space 5 years ago, it would be my title followed by my name. Think about how many times you said your title followed by your name. Or even if you say your name, then you say your title immediately after. Or in order to go further, you said whatever title that you held. Yeah, I work over here at the, I'm a manager over here at this restaurant. Your identity sustains the perception. The definition or the philosophy of what you are inside of your life. So that's why I always ask, what are you without that identity? What are you without that identity? What are you without that title? What are you without that trend? This is how we get into the aspects of programming everything around us to work for us and understanding everything already works for us and understanding that when we look at all these things like, ooh, there's agendas against me. There's an agenda to emasculate me. There's an agenda to make women more fit masculine. There's an agenda. There's a program in place. A program is only based upon an agreement of something that was already already in your subconscious mind anyway. That's the only reason you can acknowledge that that's the only way you can acknowledge that there's a program. The only way you can acknowledge that there's mind control is because you've been under mind control. But after you acknowledge it, then what? What do you do with it? It's an identity, or that you've used it as an identity or an emotional cue most of the time. That's why you're not being able to do this. That's why you're not able to do this. Then you can spend all of your time running all of your energy through that space. But what does that energy correspond to based in with you? What is something about your life? Why does it bother you? Truly. What does it link to? What does it correspond to inside of yourself? Not based on the external aspects of maintaining this identity that you wanted to give yourself. What does it really mean in aspects to your why, and why is it to you? Why do you not like it? Why do you hate it? Why don't you fuck with it? Because the key is to understand that point. So every time you go in, if you do go past that space, you're not reacting. You're learning how to respond. You're learning how to listen. You're learning how to see. You stop projecting. Because a lot of times we go into these spaces, we're just projecting. That's the militant mind. You want to stay militant. Every identity that you want to hold on to, in the aspect, I want you to think about it like this. As above, so below. As above, so below. Everything that is in this space, and we accept that we have created everything. We have created everything. We are if we say that, if I state that I am the original, I am the creator of all, there is nothing before me. The mind is all and everything is mental. And then we think about the cycles and cycles that you've been in this space and the things that you've created down the line with yourself. And if I'm the only being, only a being with a soul, when we study Gnostic texts, and it says only the beings with the spark can create or produce through alchemy, or do the transmutation through alchemy. And then I'll say them niggas ain't got souls, therefore they cannot create, they can't pull anything down, they don't have any power. They have no power whatsoever unless I give them the power. And then I can go find that information of like, okay, cool. Go when we look at we watch Bobby Hemmett lectures, and Bobby Hemmett came to the point like, when we were coming down into this space, all they served was as a servant or a custodian of the records. That's all they were the custodians of the records. They can't use it. It can't interface with them. What better way for me to put something in somebody's hands that they can't ever unlock it? But if I go through these multiple cycles and I look at all of these cycles and aspects, I'm like, yo, wait. And I really start doing this internal work, and I use something simple, and I use the simple aspect. I have my business and my company. I have my platform. I have all of my content. None of my contents ever got knocked down and messed with. None of my content's been taken. None of my contents ever messed with. The only time that I've ever gotten restriction on Facebook is one of the African groups that I was in at a point in time, but I'm not in anymore. They're the ones that reported my shit because I said some shit that went against that narrative that they're trying to stay within. I challenged that shit. So then I start thinking, what would be the 1% other than the full spectrum of my entire mind if I get past that point? Because exactly, we're bringing ourselves back online to shatter the mold that we've created as being this original sense of ourselves. The only forces that have power over you are based in your emotions. The longer you don't think about it like this, the longer we do not deal with our emotions, the longer you don't deal with your emotions, you go through the state of fear. Because we prophesized all of that shit. And the longer you don't deal with your emotions, you don't deal with the things you need to deal with, shit builds up. Shit builds up. Shit becomes something. Shit naturally becomes even bigger than it actually is, bigger than images appear, and it now has based in the behavior. How did it gain its behavior? How did it gain its access to the behavior? How does it know exactly what to do? How does it know exactly how to operate? How does it know how to get to me unless it's something that's of me? It's of the art, it's based upon me. How does it, if it's based upon me, how would it get its power? We'll say every single day, this is when I was talking about these contradictions, we'll say every single day that they stole, but then we'll go read some other text and say we gave that to them. So which part is it? I'm leaning towards, okay, we bestowed that upon them because that's part of our natural process. That's more in sync with the natural process of me being an original and experiencing things. That's more in sync with that, rather than some other narrative that's going to keep me in conflict or to keep me emotionally stirred up. They have no real power. Mm-hmm. No problem. We're taking ourselves out of this old narrative of ourselves. It's like, take an example. If we taught them, like if you taught something, you trained something how to bathe, you trained something how to do shit, and all of these narratives, you trained it. You train your dog. In the moment that you let your dog go away and it has to fend for itself, but it doesn't have the mental capacity to fend for itself, it goes into the natural behaviors. It goes into the natural instinct to survive. Its natural stimuli, the base behavior to survive. We went through our base behavior of survival. We went through the many cycles. When you look at the history, like right now they're talking about the Black Wall Street aspect, where we know that we was over there and we thrived and we survived. And then they came and shut it down. And now everybody ever since is like, we need to get back to the Black Wall Street. You'll never get back to Black Wall Street. Because of the trauma that was induced in the symbolism of that. You're not here for that aspect. Everything you create down here is going to be based in fear. Everything that's created down here is based in fear. The instinct to survive. Until you challenge your instincts to survive and truly challenge your instincts to survive and raise your instincts to the higher level, because you as you're going down that tree and you're going up and you're acknowledging these aspects, and now you feel peace. Now your new instinct is peace. Now you seek peace. Now you seek love. Now you seek joy. Those are your new instincts. Now that these are your new instincts, now that you're at a higher level, now your intuition is always challenging you to expand further into your peace. But if my instincts or my behaviors are rooted within the survival mode or the fear, then every time my intuition is challenged and I fall back into something, what would I fall back into? I would fall back into fear. This is what happens a lot of times with motherfuckers, especially coming into. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. We're living in this. You're in. You're not going to bring masses until you create in the full example and have dealt and brought those things to the surface. Because one of the things that I've grown to really, I said it earlier today. I made a post about it earlier today. We have to stop telling people. There's the same thing as telling motherfuckers black people don't go to therapy. We have to stop telling people that, yo, it's all within and you don't need nobody. You don't need nobody. You don't need no guidance. You don't need nobody to tell you things. It's all within you. What's also within them, dumbass? What's also their traumas are within. Their shadows are within. This is why when most motherfuckers start doing their shadow work and they don't know what they're doing, the reason that everything gets really, really heavy and they start reverting back or they get scared is because you don't understand that when you going into the shadows with these identities you're trying to maintain, every identity is a projection of light. So if I go into a shadow world where all of my demons that I do not understand are present, that have been feeding off of my fear, and I go in here with an identity, whatever I take into the abyss is what I'm going to have to fight. What the fuck you think you're going to be facing first? That's what's going to be used against you. All of those mommy wounds, and you, all of the mom wounds, all of the father wounds, all of these aspects of the things that you go into when you're dealing with your shadows. They're all going to take that face. They're going to take a face of the thing that you fear the most. They're going to take the face of everything that you ever feared or ever that you ever came to. So if you still got this complex and you expect them to go into the shadow realm, they can't go there. So they don't really have. So think about if they don't have the power and correspondence to there. There's no white people in the shadow world. There's no white people in the astral world. There's no white people in the higher aspects of the higher spirits and the higher realms. There's no white people there. It's you. There's no white people in the higher realms. They can't get there. They got to go through an entirely different process. They've always been beneath in this aspect. They've been based only in instinct. Their instincts, their behavior, they're only based in instinct and behavior. They're only based in instinct and behavior. That's what they're at. That's where they're at. That's the level that you came down. You have to go down through that aspect. So what would be if you were going down into something, what would be the thing? What do you think would be the thing that you would think would be empowered down here in this space? In that sense of the illusion, what would have the power down here in this space? The most furthest thing removed from the most furthest thing removed, or the most refracted aspect that cannot absorb what you title the white person, the white man. We have to get to a point. We're getting to a point now where those identities have to fall away. Using that title is the same. Using that title is the same way that if you've been abused, in this sense of this abuse, you're threatened. And now everything, uh-huh. Uh-huh. A lot of people have not activated that aspect within themselves. The mass awakening or the mass shift that's happened has been killing a lot of motherfuckers. Like, you've seen a lot of motherfuckers dying in the news and niggas out here dying and all that shit, because they didn't do they weren't ready for that frequency. This is a different frequency that we're on now. It's a different wavelength that is being produced now. That fear base doesn't work anymore. If you can see it, that means you're still a part of that frequency. We've spoken on that before. If you are still can see, react, interface with it, that means you are still something, a part of you is still on that frequency. If you're reacting to it in the same way you've always reacted to it, a part of you that you have to deal with is still on that frequency. That longing, that wanting, that needing, that coinciding with your trauma, that event, you're still on that frequency. You're still in that trendscape. You're still hiding from something. Just like they're hiding from something. That's why you always want to call people out and be like, they hiding from everything in their life. If you can say that, naturally, why does it bother you that they're hiding from something? Why does it really bother you? Why does it get to you that they're hiding from something? I don't understand how niggas can't understand this, because it's not for them to understand. You get to that point where you're like, if they're not ready, they're not ready. I'm not forcing anyone to be ready. You can't force anybody to be ready. You can't force anybody to download the information, because if their mind is only used to, let's say your mind has now been expanded to 1 million folders. You can open up 1 million folders. You open up 1 million folders or open up your records back that far, but they still on the first 5 folders in their mind. It don't matter what you tell that person, those 5 folders are full. Until they empty those folders, acknowledge what's inside of those folders, they can't expand. Yeah, let the zombies live. But what you will notice is, interesting point. Think about, y'all remember the movie Resident Evil Apocalypse? You remember when that nigga finally was, when he took some of the specimens and he made them killers? Introducing them to something that they can't fully absorb, and made them monsters, made them lost, made them go crazy. That's the same equivalent to when you're trying to give people information that they're not ready for. Everybody that you're gonna go through that space, even in me doing my work now, there is I had to get to a point to where I had to sit in the seat of that discomfort, that everybody's not going to be able to take in what I say and how I say it. Because until I did that, I found myself trying to adjust what I was saying. And I'm not talking about like I was finding myself adjusting what I was saying to fit everybody or to fit everything. And then I found myself getting lost in the identities I was creating, because I was creating these multiple personalities or bringing these other personalities back online. What I was really doing, I was reopening up my wounds. So in a sense of me going through that aspect, when you're on your path, you're going through these stages, you're going through these states, you're realizing how many wounds are still present and how deep the wound actually is. A lot of stuff that we only looking at based on the surface level, but it actually goes a lot more deeper. We get hung up on an aspect because it gives us an emotional euphoria, that feeling that we've been searching for, then we stop going deeper. You're going deeper. You're going deeper into yourself. You need to understand yourself in the full so you can own your story. So you're not sitting there every time you get to this point to where you you truly do not care. But your ability and your intuition is opened within the compassion aspect. not caring what other people think about you, not caring what other people think or are saying about you, or how they feel about what you do. You set that tone. The only way there's the levels to that aspect, because it challenges that identity of why you were doing it, and it's forcing you to ask yourself, why do you do it? Other than you sitting there saying, I do this because this makes me this. There's nothing outside of you that is going to make you more spiritual, more advanced, more anything. Everything outside of you will be an enhancement once you learn that you are the original source projecting onto this new tree that you are now building. You don't go up you're not doing your work to look at this old tree and I can't go back to the old tree. I can't go back to the old tree. I had to fall off of this tree and go back through the process and create my own tree, to create my own synthesis, to create my own connections, because everything on that tree was attached based on the old aspects of that tree. My old tree, my old personalities. This tree was the tree that I was rooted in was based in survival. I'm no longer based in survival. I am in the constant cultivation of my peace. So now that I'm on this tree and I'm growing my tree, and my tree's based in peace, my tree's based in my love of myself, the understanding of myself, understanding that I don't know shit, and I'm surprised at everything that's coming into my space and this level of acceptance. This tree radiates on an entirely different frequency. And the ones that are ready to come to this tree to gain this nourishment, they'll come to this tree, build it, and they will come. A lot of us still try to synthesize or keep ourselves using the old tree, using the old floor, using the old aspects, dress them up, make them look really, really nice. But then we keep wondering why the same things keep happening in our lives. Why you go 3 years and the same thing has happened? Because you still stuck in those old expectancies. Once you really understand that you're in a relationship, use something as simple. Once you understand you're in a relationship with yourself, you start to look at every relationship that you're in differently, because you're not looking at it as a predestination. The way that I used to look at relationship was based on a predestination complex. That meant if I went into the relationship at this year, at this point, this was supposed to happen. This is supposed to happen. I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to do this, because I had an expectancy. And that expectancy was based on my behavior. So that behavior was based on my instinct to survive. So without that behavior or that identity, I did not know how to survive. This is why you always got this. Is when you got motherfuckers saying, "Oh, I went through my whole phase." Never went through one. I was just out there in the world. I didn't know what I wanted. And then you lie to yourself. I was just out there being free spirited and just allowing myself to just be. No, you weren't. You had an identity to it. You have to stop lying to yourself. Be honest with yourself. You were doing what you could within the space. Simply because, okay, this is what it looks like without me taking accountability and responsibility. That's all it ever boils down to. Every negative, every positive, every correspondence is based on whether you take an accountability or responsibility for it. When I say I can go down my entire line of my story and I can own every part of my story. I did some fucked up shit. I did some great shit. Everything that I did up to this point, I can own everything that I've done. I can tell you what I done. I can tell you why I did it. I can own up to it. If it comes up, the learning moment to tell somebody about it, I'll tell them about it. If they ask me, there's no reason for me to hide anything. All of I'm integrated with my shadow. So there is no hiding anything. There is no hiding. There's no avoidance. This sense of avoidance is gone. That sense of that needing and that longing for something is gone. I know how to surface those energies, working with those energies in a higher aspect, because I'm always about mastering my peace. I'm about mastering my peace. I'm about mastering my truth. I'm about mastering that aspect. But it was a lot of shit that I had to dig through. There were a lot of crates that I had to dig through when I went into that basement. When we think about the aspects, and this is when we get into these aspects of these traumas, and the life that you create and correspond with your trauma. Some of you don't even, some of you just have, some of you don't even, there's not even hatred anymore. It was threatened because you did not know or understand it. When we think about this, there's this silent competition that goes on in your mind that you want your way to be the way to work. That's based in that competition complex with yourself. I'm going to do it this way because if I do it this way, then if I get it this way, I can remain in that behavior. But everything, every sign that comes in when you take your shit serious, you see the signs that play out that tell you yeah, Darth got it. Uh-huh. That pattern, that shit that you getting stuck in, that pattern has to be addressed. That pattern's not a part, that pattern's a part of your contract. And until you deal with that aspect, falling into that space, that you got to really get to the source of that. We got to understand these things. Using the aspect, like, we'll use sexual trauma as an example because that's one of the things we really have to make normal. That's one of the things we really have to make normal. The aspects of understanding shadow work and addiction, shadow work and the sexual trauma, and understanding these shadows. The reason a lot of these things don't come to the surface or they're avoided is because we do not make it a new source code. We have not created the source code. We are still using the old algorithms, and the old algorithms that we're using are within that stream of wokeness, consciousness, new age, all of these aspects, energy vampires, and not saying that these things do not exist, but the way that we're using them is based on identities, based on avoidance. We're not taking that full understanding of charging. We're not taking that full aspect of understanding healing. You've been doing all of this shit unconsciously. And because you've been doing it unconsciously, it is not taking time to root because you're using it as an escape mechanism. Let's think about the aspect. Let's take this next line and talk about sex. Talk about the physical aptitude of sex as a healing quotient. If my instincts are based in survival, then the highest point that I can go to when I think about sex is to create something or procreation. Every time that you bond with somebody or make an agreement with someone, sacred energy exchange, you create something. What do you create? If I'm unconscious that I'm creating shit, what do I go into that space with? That would mean that the lowest aspect that is created is using the portal to bring something through this space. That means at a point in time in your soul contract, when you have that child of coming to that space, that's a part of that's going to be teaching you. That's okay. You need an anchor to help you learn some things about yourself. I can put it down into the exact tenses of it. If you have a child and whatever age an event happened into your life, and you go back and look at it, if the child's not old at that age anymore, or if you're getting older, I can guarantee you can put your child's life and your traumas side by side in every event that you went through in the traumatic experience and what was created based on experience, that energy is going to cycle as a lesson from the child. Every single one of them. Every single thing. But when we take this sense of ownership, because we're still stuck in survival, and we go back to the good old sharecropping days, some of y'all are still having kids based on the survival narrative, the predestination narrative, because you think that's the highest point. The same thing when we think about the aspects of marriage, you think it from a level of expectancy. That if I go to this point, once I get this external title, then I can start doing my work. That's not how any of this shit works. You're not going from the external to the internal. It comes from internally external. So you're trying to fix things. A lot of us go into these spaces, that conflict that we have with ourselves, we're trying to fix some shit that we have not dealt with. We're trying to rewrite it without understanding the original. We're trying to rewrite it based on the original or the older aspect or the old algorithm. That old algorithm. I don't want to use the old algorithms to do anything that I'm doing. I'm Scorpio rising. I'm Judas. I kissed the old paradigm on the cheek. It's time for it to die. We have to let go of that old paradigm. We have to let go of that old paradigm in order for us to look at the old paradigm. We have to let go we have to become aware, come to the state of awareness to be able to see and understand these aspects so we can tap into our sight, our ability to see the multiple streams of thought. Everything down here gives you that example of that. And then everything down here is based in, remember, everything down here is rooted in aspects of fear. So when we think about something like we use mental disorders, and we think about schizophrenia, bipolarism, the two top tier joints. Bipolarism is shifting between your poles. But if I'm unaware that I'm shifting between my poles, the masculine energy and the feminine energy, and I've not healed these aspects, I can't master being able to shift between the poles. I'm bipolar as fuck because I know how to shift between the poles. When you come into the aspects of schizophrenia or the multiple pathways or the multiple voices, whenever we go back and we go open up the book and you go study that, you go look at go back to Africa. Motherfuckers want to go back to Africa, but there was also schizophrenia in Brazil. Schizophrenia, motherfuckers that were deemed that in this current state would be deemed as schizophrenics. Those are the motherfuckers that the shaman stood next to. The shaman was the only one that knew how to speak to the schizophrenic because the schizophrenic was open to the multiple portals. So they were treated as such. But we're so used to keeping ourselves lower based on the instinct to survive that we have lost the ability to understand these aspects, to understand our emotions in that deeper aspect, to understand that when you are depressed and you're going through depression, it is your higher self or your higher mind trying to tell you how long are you going to hold on to these identities. And it's shooting down the identities that you're holding on to. Think about every time that you were depressed and everything you did while you were depressed and the things you tried to do to look happy. You tried to put on an identity and the identity held for a little bit of time. But when you got back to the house, you took off the identity, you were looking at yourself. I'm not where I want to be at. I'm not where I want to be at. And then you start speaking in the mirror and you're looking at your traumas. My dad said I wasn't going to be shit. My mom said I wasn't going to be this. They said I wasn't going to be this. You keep yourself in that state trying to maintain the identities. Also, you can survive. Trying to remain selfless. Selfless is this aspect. When I think about the attitude of being selfless, I no longer want to be selfless. Because selfless means that I do not have the control over my body, over the avatar that I navigate. So I'm looking at being selfish. Selfish means I have control of every aptitude of the physical body, of my avatar. So now my actions that I do commit to, they're based on me primarily to learn something, to study, to learn, to grow in some type of way. We have to change the definitions, change that paradigm of definitions. You've been told the entire time, don't be selfless. You've been told the entire time that everybody gets this, everybody happens like this. It's a disorder. You go to motherfuckers and they try to give you pills. They give you all this stuff to keep you locked into that space, give you another physical attachment. Instead of you like, what if I don't have this? Or what if I remove this? I'm in the space now with myself where if I do not feel like doing it, I do not force myself to do it. If I do not feel like doing it, I do not force myself to do it. If I know that it's going to, in a certain aspects, like certain things that you force yourself not to do, you have to ask yourself why. There's a process to it, but you get to a point to where it's like, you know yourself and you trust yourself. In the ability to, when you go into a space and you do not feel like doing something, and you're like, I really do not feel like doing that. I'm not going to learn anything. It's not based on me learning anything or expanding or it's growing anything. My intuition is telling me not to do this. So I'm not going to do it. I've avoided so many instances just in the last year alone by listening to that aspect. It has helped me change my pattern because it left a hole in this. It left a hole there. Most of the things that we do that we know we don't want to do is because we're trying to fill a hole. We're trying to fill a void with something. We haven't learned how to charge ourselves. When it comes to your emotional energy, and now you're in this space, some of the times you won't even listen to people that are in the space that actually mean you some good or going to give you some good, giving you a certain body of light because you ain't got to that level yet, and you're not used to that type of charge. What they said made you think, it made you feel bad. Why did it make you feel that way? Everything that's hitting you is making you feel some type of way. Why did it make you feel that way? Are you ready to face it or are you not? You can tell in your actions if you're not ready to face it. You tell in your actions if you are ready to face it. How many times are you going to tell yourself that I'm tired of living this life that I'm living? And when are you going to start taking accountability for the things that you're doing instead of sitting your ass down? You want to be everywhere. You want to be everywhere. You want to see everything and stay within that space. Because that's your comfort zone. That's your comfort zone out there. Your super ego, that's your comfort zone. The moment that something comes through and destroys your little ozone layer, you don't know how to react to it. That fragile identity that you created, that's what you're at war with. Someone says, if I sat here and I really thought about disciplining myself, and I thought about it like weeks ago, I love the ability to work from my house. I love the ability to work from my house. I remember when I would I remember the things that I remember from the space, and this is why we understand these correspondences. I remember the first thoughts when I said I wanted to work from the house, and I remember the jobs that were presented at the time of work from the house, send out envelopes and call center shit that I was like, man, I'm not sitting down doing that shit. But now that I'm looking in the space where I'm at now, and I was like in between right now emails, in between readings and sessions, And I was like looking at the different new jobs that you can work from the house. You can be an Uber dispatcher. That means you ain't got to even own any trucks, but you can be a digital dispatcher from your house and dispatch orders and get a commission. Man, I can sit home and work a couple hours a day, but what would stop you from working a couple hours a day? It challenges that old identity, that old need to be seen. You got used to being seen all the time. You got used to that same damn routine, doing the same damn shit over and over and over again. But now you come into a space to where this is how you know when you are hiding from your shadow in your light. That is what an addiction is rooted in. That's what an addiction is rooted in. When you are hiding from your shadow in the light. So many times I used to realize that my perception changed, that most of the times when I had people around me, it was just to keep me charged, or to keep me in the light of others. So this false perception of being selfless and helping everyone was based on me avoiding me dealing with myself. If I was out for 8 hours of a day helping other individuals based on the basis of survival, the instinct to survive, my instinct to survive corresponded with their instinct to survive. So my instinct to help them was based on survival. But in order for me to maintain that, they had to maintain their behavior. So when I changed my behavior and I started saying no, I literally went from the investor to the consultant. Your work is going to take you from being the investor or investing into these other emotions and these other aptitudes to being the consultant. As the consultant to my friends and to my family, when they weren't serious, the contract expired. There was no other investment. I didn't invest any other energy other than consulting them. They didn't want to take my consultant. They didn't want to take me tweaking their idea, like tweak it and, yo, you may need to do this, this, and this. They didn't want to do that. Then it was nothing to me. I did the work to become the consultant to provide that information. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. But that can't come from a state of avoidance. That's you being honest and standing on your square, standing in your position. I love being able to, if someone comes to me and I can consult them, because when you're investing into helping others, you're unconsciously always going to step into the position to be where they're at. Now, when I'm having conversations, the natural intuitive thought process is to bring them up here. Let's bring that conversation up here. It doesn't, and this is the natural process of it. These boundaries, based on my new standards and my new frequency and my new vibration, shatter all of the shit that was around what it really was, to help them see it as them, or to help them see it from a different perspective. I've had multiple conversations and it just like, I never thought about it that way. I've never thought about it that way. In my mind, I'm saying in my head, like, you never really thought before. Then to them, I give them sometimes I do say, you've never really thought before. Just depending on the situation, depending on the individual. You've never, and then I can switch it and be like, have you ever really thought about that when you think? Because you never think, you always listen. You have never had a thought. You've always listened. Even when you thought you had a thought, you were only listening. Yeah. And I said, they be like, oh my God. You've never, like, but in honesty, you've never really had a thought is that's been recalling something that you listened to you saying to yourself before. You're only recalling some shit. Your stream of thought is locked in a certain barrier. You're like, man, I don't want to go through that shit. Because you're trying to look for yourself in it. Think about a conversation that you had and you sat back and you thought about some shit. What were you listening to? What were you listening to? Okay, that's all you do when you think you're listening to something. You're about to recall some shit. What are you listening to? Where is that thought coming from? What memory are you tapped into? What are you opening yourself up to? As above, so below. Because as above, it's a big ass file share. That's why when motherfuckers come online and certain people come online and based on their level of work, everybody's downloads can be different because some of the downloads are for you and only you, and you ain't supposed to be sharing that shit yet. And then other downloads is for a mass aspect. Like this is a mass download as a mass aspect based on, and it's based in what I've already studied, what I've learned, what I've experienced to remove the biases from it. So when I bring it out, it's not based in bias. It's not based in fear. I'm not trying to give you a fear narrative. I don't want you to feel emotionally. I'm not giving emotional taglines. I'm not doing any of that shit. I'm giving you the information. I'm giving you when you leave, what is your perspective? What did you find out about yourself? What did you learn about yourself? I don't care what you learned about me because I'll tell you everything about me. So there is no more projection. We're getting out of this space of this projection aspect. A lot of us got stuck in projecting our needs and our wants, projecting our unseen, because your unseen, I'm going to say that every single lecture, your unseen is what creates your space. Your undealt with is what creates your space. Your repressed is what creates your space. Your instincts are what give life to the identities you use to interact with the things inside of your space. That's your illusion. This is how you build these cubes, your illusion. That's why when you come online and your abilities start kicking in, like me, I got the same, and I know they're the same fucking crows that follow me everywhere. 6 o'clock. When I leave the house at 6 a.m., 1 second. When I leave my house at 6 a.m., there are 3 crows. I've named these 3 crows: Rico, Ace, and Mitch. Yes, I named them after the characters of Paid in Full. I have 3 crows that are outside every single day, same time when I leave out the house. Niggas fly beside the car. Niggas are in front of the car. And we have a whole damn conversation while I'm sitting there, if I'm letting the car warm up or I'm just sitting there getting the music, getting my frequency, getting myself situated in the car. They sit there. I go to the gym, 5 more fucking crows. All around my car. That's going back into my past life when I was a fucking crow. When I was a crow. Everything you've already done it all before. So when we go into these spaces with ourselves of understanding what you're listening to, and you understand that I had to understand for myself that I was the main reason, like for an example, for the main reason I felt like I needed people around me was because if I had to sit down at the house by myself and have a conversation, I was scared of what I was going to listen to. I was in fear of what I was in fear of what's going to come to the surface. I was in fear of that space. Once I started understanding this aspect of myself and really did that, it's going deep into that internal work. Now I notice that when people are around me, they can't hold back anything. They get to the point, they'll get really, really sensitive. They start just talking. They just start talking. They start telling me all of their issues and telling me the shit that they're going through, things that start falling out, even the things they don't want to fall out. That's all a part of that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But if I did not understand that, I could not filter through and not absorb these aspects. When you have your empathic, when you're in that empathic energy sense, me having that empathic energy sense, I had to learn how to filter through without being possessed by those energies because they're naturally there. A lot of times we come into that space and based on the fundamental aspect because we're still living within the limits of the identity. So motherfuckers be like, I'm an empath and I don't like the way everybody's feelings be feeling. It's because you're supposed to learn how to filter through the noise. Until I learned how to filter through the noise, my dumb ass is sitting there getting up, absorbing everybody's anger, their sadness, their sorrows. And the only reason that I could absorb it is because it was already present. This is that major key that I learned in the aspects of harnessing and working with my that empathic energy. That it was already inside. I could I could absorb their projections because it was already something present. That's the only way it can attach. That's the only way because it's already present. It's a present aspect. And then we got to understand, is it my past? Is it from one of my past life cycles? Why do these people keep coming around me and irritating me? Why do I always get these irritating ass people in my ear? Because they're a part of that clause in your contract in your current state from a past contract. They're a battle and a conflict. Now, physically, they're a battle and a conflict that you've been avoiding. And in this life, you got to deal with it. You can't run away from it. You got to deal with it. You got that one friend that no matter what they do, they ain't getting right. They don't get right in their life. You got those individuals in your life. So no matter what, they can't get right. They can't seem to get right. And they just seem to, and you don't even have to go look for them. This is the difference between that. You don't even have to go look for them. They always seem to find you. They always seem to find you. There's a reason that they keep finding you because there are aspects of you that you have not yet understood yourself of. There's something inside of you that you have not learned how to respond to. Some people come in your life that are irritating as fuck, and because you have a good heart, you can't tell them no. It's time to tell them no. There's some things that happen in your life that you were supposed to say yes to, but because you were still stuck on the threatening aspect or no, that's not what I ever wanted to look for, you got to go outside of this spectrum of what the fuck you were looking for. You wanted this, and this. Shit don't exist anymore. Is that within you? Have you become those things? Because most of the things that we looking for in an external sense, those are shits based on identity anyway. He got to be educated. She got to be this. She got to be this. Let all that shit go. Let go all these aspects of identity. Let all that bullshit go. Accept what comes in. What is about to teach me. Some of y'all running away from Some of y'all are in these aspects of, when it comes to an aspect of a relationship, you got that predestination or this old set of rules that you got set up in your mind of what you thought a relationship was supposed to be. Now you met an entirely different motherfucker, and now you want this motherfucker to fall in line with the same shit that you was doing. And now everything that you do seems to be wrong. Everything you do seems to be wrong. Or you feel everything I do isn't good enough for you. Or everything I do for you ain't good enough for you. Was it based on an identity? A question they may never ask you. A question they may never ask you, because it's up to you to ask yourself that damn question. Was it based on an identity, based on behavior? Everything will change. I promise you, everything changes. Sometimes the things that you used to look for, now you getting hit over. Now you getting hit over the head. Now you get hit over the head with some shit because you like, man, I wanted it to happen this way, and it can't happen that way no more. It's not for that. That correspondence ain't for you. You want that to come. You got to accept it as it's coming to you. You got to accept how it's coming to you. You keep getting threatened, and then you want to back out of the relationship, self-sabotage relationships because you're not getting what you thought that you're not getting what you desired in that first desired effect with yourself. It's time to let that shit go. That predestination complex you got set in your mind. You thought you would be married in a couple of years. Why? Other than the years, other than the time. Why else did you think you were going to be married? You don't understand what marriage is. Marriage is every time that you bond with somebody. From the physical sense to the emotional sense. If I'm whole and you're not whole, even if I didn't know the natural succession, if you took all that away, and now what I understand now, it changes my perception of what I used to accept. What I used to expect. Now I'm in a different level of acceptance. So now I'm not looking back at when I look now in my space, I'm not looking at it as I wasted so many years with that. I wasted so many years with that bitch. I wasted so many years with that. You wasted so many years with that nigga. No, you didn't. Some of y'all are in karmic loops, don't even realize that shit. Some of y'all are in a karmic loop. And the karmic loop isn't based on the person. The karmic loop is based on the level of things that you're supposed to go through. But you keep thinking a karmic relationship is simply who you get to sleep with or who you fucking. So now in that sense, you're thinking as long as I'm celibate, I don't have to experience it. This is what you're telling yourself in truth that you don't even realize you're telling yourself. That's what the universe is going to respond. That's how the frequency is going to be read. That's how the numbers are going to be read. The code is going to be read. You thinking because you celibate, you can't be in a karmic relationship. Okay, guess what? You don't want to experience and go through the physical love-based relationship. All right, cool. I'm gonna give you a friendship that's gonna be your karmic reflection. And now you got friends around you that are karmic reflections of your avoidances. You got women hating ass niggas around you that are threatened because of something that happened to them, all for different reasons. You got a homegirl in your life that her mother was a single mother, and her mother became a very bitter single mother. So she became narcissistic. So she passed on these narcissistic traits to her daughter. And now this daughter is your homegirl in your life, trying to tell you how to get your life right. And you listen to it because you're attached based on the trauma pattern. But then you never ask yourself, if she can give me all this information, why is she where she's at? The instinct, the behavior, the pattern. She's not using it. She's giving it to you in a certain way. So y'all bond together based on an external narrative. But until she deals with her internal aspects, it'll never succeed. You can get all that knowledge and all the aspects that you go get. Without application, it's just an ego. It's just feeding that ego. It's just feeding your ego. That's all it's doing. It's just feeding the identity. It's just feeding and helping you birth another identity. You running around talking about you a fucking registered nurse, but you can't see your feet. How can you be something if you're not implementing it to yourself? There's something simple based on your perception. That's how you start understanding you're only doing what you can based on you're only doing what you can. You're not doing truly what you want. You're stuck in survival mode. You're doing what you can to get what you can get so you can keep that behavior intact. Because I can give you the example. Once I realized that I was only doing what I could and I allowed myself to become ultimately triggered and to get shot at, headshots and body shot, I allowed myself to get beat the fuck down. I could not come to the position of like, you know what? That's not what I want to do. But why am I here? Why did I have that job? What did that job symbolize? All of my jobs symbolized creation. All of my jobs symbolized learning basic skills in that space, through that space, learning how to interact and learning how to do certain things in that space. It served the purpose. The lessons that I learned from my jobs have nothing to do with the experience, because I'm always experiencing something. Every day that I wake up is a new experience. All that mattered was the lesson and what I learned. This is why a lot of us get insecure about dealing with our work, because we've been living out the same exact day. That's why I say every Tuesday, I haven't said it on Tuesday in a minute. If you listen to the podcast, I always say today is the only day that matters. You are the only one that matters. Because when you understand that everything outside of you is a reflection to help you experience and or observe, it to experience is based on the emotional trigger, and to observe is to master the lesson, then you realize that every day is going to be a different experience. Every day going to be a different experience. Every day is a different experience for me. I thrive in looking for different experiences. I thrive in the learning. I thrive in doing the shit that I do, because it's of me. It's my authentic self. It's not based on avoidance. I can say what I need to say, because when you start listening to conversations, the conversations are going to change. Motherfuckers thought that I was antisocial as fuck. I'm not antisocial. I just protect my energy. It's not from avoidance. I just protect my energy. But you got to go through your work first. Because in me saying, when motherfuckers keep saying, I protect my energy at all costs, I protect my energy at all costs, you really ain't got to say, you ain't really got to announce that every 15 seconds. Your standards set the tone for the boundary of you saying that you protect your energy. But you got to start protecting your energy yourself. You got to understand your energy first. A lot of people want to say that they're protecting their energy and don't know what the fuck their energy is. They don't know what their emotions are. They haven't done the emotional work. They haven't dealt with those. They haven't dealt with that. They haven't dealt with that elephant, the elephants that are in their rooms. They ain't dealt with that shit yet. That's why they keep reacting to. That's why they'll go from I'm a god and I'm a goddess to as soon as a vaccine shit hit the damn screen, or they say something about Axe body spray, or they say something about bonnets. Motherfuckers like, oh my God, I'm triggered. I'm upset. Can't tell me about myself. Okay. 90% of it, I laugh at it. It's funny as hell. I laugh at it. It's funny. It's like, okay. I laugh at. I'm laughing at you. I'm like, why are you so mad? Why are you so mad at that? What does it really? Why is it really bothering you? Let's get to the real reason why it's bothering you. But you want to maintain that identity. You still trying to be accepted. I don't know. We bring up honest we've been bringing up honest the last 3 weeks. Why are you fighting so hard to be accepted by everyone? To be accepted by everyone is to expand the spectrum of frequency in a lower level. I'm not accepted by people that still fear themselves. I'm not accepted by ones that are still in fear and are still at war with themselves. I'm not accepted by, that's not what I'm accepted by. That's not of me. That's no longer of me. My instinct is peace, love, joy, enlightenment, ever growing, ever changing, ever shifting. The theories about you looking at motherfuckers out here right now still mad about there's reptiles. How would the reptile be created? What does a snake do? A snake sheds its skin. So if a snake sheds its skin and I see reptiles, I see, for me, when I look at it, my perceptions change. If I see that and it hits me a little bit and I'm like interested, like, ooh. Yeah, exactly. You got to let go of these damn, I'm not wearing any mask. Every time you see me, it's Papa Lucifer. If I'm gonna give the full explanation because we got a new batch. There's new people in. The meaning behind Godical Alchemist, how I synthesized Godical Alchemist and Papa Lucifer. How these names came to me to be used, to be bestowed upon me. Godical Alchemist. The G, the generator, the operator, and the destroyer of the hidden, of the destroyer of the barriers of the hidden, the occult being the hidden, destroying the barriers of the hidden, bringing the hidden to the surface. The alchemist aspect is to change the algorithm and the source in which we generate and operate and destroy on. Godical alchemist. That's what that means. That's what that synthesizes. That's my ley line to that. So every single time I live up to I honor my spirit in that way. Papa Lucifer. Papa Lucifer. I am the parallel to assess paradigms and assimilate. All the old paradigms have to be destroyed. We still living in the old aspects of ourselves. And Lucifer, light bearer, going to the light bearer, bearing the light into the darkness of the aspects, going deeper and higher into the aspects of angel Uriel, going into the higher aspects of myself, going back into the feminine aspect. Because my mother, who I love so dearly, gave me my purpose. Metamorphosis. Ain't shit supposed to stay the same. You're getting stuck in that, I want to stay the same and I want to, no, stop getting stuck in that paradigm. Everything you're doing, you're going to come to a purpose. I learned that I never had a purpose. And since I never had a purpose, I never had a plan. And since I never had a plan, the only thing that gave me any false sense of authority was the identity that I formed gave me a false sense of purpose or a pretext of purpose, this mirage of pride. So I could take pride in being behind it. So when I wasn't that, I was only doing what I can. because I had an expectancy based on that title. So I was only doing what I can. So when I wasn't doing it, I would revert back to my natural pattern. This is when we start thinking, you really got to start looking at your patterns. You can keep telling yourself every single day, when I get this, this, and this, then I'm going to do this. If it's not a part of your pattern, without the external, then you can't become it because you don't understand it. It's like a motherfucker talking about, I want to be a millionaire. You don't understand the basis of being a millionaire. So you can never become a millionaire. How does a nigga become a millionaire? A millionaire don't spend money. Let's look at this on this lower level aspect. We build it up to the higher. A millionaire don't spend money. A millionaire creates assets to make money for them, to keep their continuous stream so that $1 million is there. Take it take it back to Harlem. The double up aspect. A millionaire knows he doesn't have $1 million till they got $2 million. So you thinking about being a millionaire, you only got 500 grand. Because you don't have $1 million until you got 2 million. So if I only have $1 million, I only got 500 grand. That keeps you in a constant state of humility with yourself and integrity, how you move. When you think about that aspect and let's bring that into the aspect of your thought process. I don't have the energy that I thought I had if I'm only basing my energy based into a projection, based on projecting. Because it takes a lot of energy to project. So in order for me to have a lot of energy to project my thought based in fear, something has to co-sign for my projection to give it its full body. It has to have a core. It has to have a charge. What would be the core? What would be the charge to my projection of the way that I feel about the world? My trauma, the trauma I didn't deal with, the issue that I'm not dealing with, the repressed memory that I'm not dealing with, the shit that I'm not having that conversation with myself about. That's what cosigns my projection. That's what cosigns every time you say you projected some shit. Say niggas ain't shit. What was the relationship with your father like? Remember, positive and negative. It ain't good or bad. When we think about traumatic experiences, we always think bad. We always want to think bad. But a traumatic experience can be the way that you were raised that was positive at that point in time, but it didn't give you the lessons that you needed to learn in your current state. So if daddy spoiled you, that means you never learned the basis. Daddy spoiled you. So naturally in that space, your mama didn't spoil you. So all you remember is your mom was bad. You thought your mom was bad because she didn't let you get everything you got. So the over aspect of acknowledging was your dad gave you everything that you got. So now you in your current space expecting niggas to give you everything that you want. But your mother was teaching you humility. Your mother was teaching you your mother was giving you that guidance and wisdom through her way. It may have been narcissistic. It may have been, yeah. You sitting back over there, man, I hated my mom. My mom didn't let me get cooked. My mom didn't let me get all of this shit. My mom didn't let me do this. My mom didn't let me do this at the house. My mom said it because I was grown. Trigger, you were grown. Identity. So when I get grown, what is the first thing you did in your first place? You only can build from where you came from. So now your whole space is filled into a certain way. But in order to maintain it, you got to tap back into that energy. You got to tap back into that projection in order to state your claim or claim where you at in your space. You just keep going. You don't want to, because you still got that you got this abrupt fear that happened to you when you were little, and now you've been stuck and you unconsciously. This is the most crazy, the most depth part about it. You unconsciously do it. You've been doing it for so long that it just became, that unconscious act became a behavior, and it just rooted within your survival instincts. So now you either overly emotional or you overly submissive in spaces. And you think when you're overly submissive, that's you being vulnerable. And when you're being overly aggressive, that's your fear of vulnerability. Yes, it is. But there's a key to it. What experience made you feel that? It's a difference, because it's all about the aspects of your balance. I'm submissive to myself primarily. I've submitted to myself. I went through the self-love process of being submissive to myself. I went through the self-care process, the self-love regimens of becoming submissive to myself first. Because as I learned to submit to myself, the thing that stopped me from submitting to myself was the things that were coming up. So in a state of avoidance, to avoid submitting to myself, I felt like I needed somebody else to submit to me in that sense before even submitting to myself. I cannot get anything if I'm not done it myself first. I'm just projecting what I think submission is. Submission is you do whatever I say because I'm doing all this, and this. That's not what submission is. So whenever I went into these spaces or these relationships, and then in some relationships, I was overly submissive, always trying to change. I was using these narcissistic traits and patterns. So I would get hella mad, be hella upset, hella mad. The moment that they checked me or I wasn't getting what I wanted, then I would get hella submissive to get what I wanted. And I just bounced between these two polarities of being hella submissive or hella aggressive. When I didn't want people around me, I got hella aggressive. When I needed people around me, I got hella submissive because I wasn't learning that aspect within myself. I was avoiding the lessons that were in the middle. I was either overly this or I was, think about your chakra system. When you super shy and you submissive and you just a loner in this aspect, and then on the other side you overly aggressive, it becomes this aspect of arrogance. You need everybody to fall in line with this arrogance, or you need everybody to fall in line and protect you, or you need everybody in your line to fall under you. But in the center, that center aspect, my awareness is learning why I was overly aggressive, where my aggression came from, and where my passive aggressiveness came from. In order for me to become aware and now come into the intuition of the understanding my emotion, the emotional charge of me becoming submissive, i.e., now I am in balance. I submitted to myself. I allowed the vulnerability to happen. I allowed what needed to come to the surface to come to the surface. I allowed myself to detox. I allowed myself to sit in those positions. I allowed myself to go totally against things that I used to believe in and then learn the lessons. I allowed myself to do what I didn't want to do in that space to learn the lessons. I went through my experiences. You can't be afraid to go through these experiences. You know exactly what you need to be doing. The thing that's always going to stop you is going to be some external aspect because it's filtered based on that fear. I use, one second. I remember my first ever apartment. Remember my first ever apartment? It wasn't really mine. Remember my first ever apartment. I remember how I got the apartment in the correspondence of me getting the apartment. I remember how I lost the apartment. My first apartment back in like 2005. First apartment, my first place. My first place. I had a big homie. He was like the big brother because I was the oldest, so I never had a big brother. So he had the big brother complex because he was his brother. His experiences with his brothers was like doing all types of dumb shit and all this other shit. So he had those corresponding wounds to my need for acceptance. So corresponding in that space, got the place to stay. I remember he moved. He said, yo, you can keep the apartment. You stay at the apartment. In order for, so you ain't hurting on money, you got to just find a roommate. I was like, all right, cool. Unconsciously, I transmuted what he said. I transmuted his energies and his thought processes were transferred over to me because they were with. That's how that space was created. So I had to submit to that space and how it was created. It's how you get stuck in these loops. I got stuck in that space. That space was not for me, and the universe let me know the space was not for me. I remember I got a roommate. That nigga was having some issues at his mother house or whatever. I didn't know this nigga whole backstory. I just knew the nigga had the money. He said he had the money. In that space, to maintain the energy in that space, everybody that I associated with had their own emotional wounds. The girl I was dealing with at the time had her own avoidance issues. My homeboys in there, they had their own avoidance issues. So that energy was in this space. The energy was in this space. I remember I had to go out of town. I went out of town. I was avoiding some shit. I went on an escapecation. I went on an escape vacation. You can't escape from your shadows, and I'm gonna get to that part. So I left. I was like, yo, I'm gonna give you. I was like, all you got to do is, you got your habit of rent. When you get your habit of rent, go put it in the box. Go slide it in the little box, and they'll know the other half is in there. Just sign on it and drop it in the box. My dumb ass ends up, he was like, why don't you just, instead of you worrying about that, why don't you just give me your half? Gave him the money order. And then I'll put them together. That way they're not separated. I was like, okay, bet. I'm not really thinking. I'm like avoiding about to go out with this chick somewhere. Come back. Everything seemed to be normal. This nigga's like not showing up to the house. I'm like, nigga, you live here. I don't know why you ain't here. I'm thinking he chilling out with this girl, some girl he met. I get this notice in the mail. Stuck in the side of the door. Rent wasn't paid. I asked him, like, yo, what happened to the money? I had gave you the money, or he could at least slip that in there. And then, I mean, I could have explained to them and talked to them and da-da-da. He was like, man, gave me this whole damn story. I get upset, man. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, nigga, that's $750, nigga. I went out and did this whole damn trip and all this bullshit. I went on this trip. I'm gone. And I come back and I trusted you with this. I was only talking to my damn self. Because before I left, before I left, I had the full amount for the rent. I always had the full amount of the rent. Just this one damn time, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna trust this nigga to have his half. Don't know why I did that. I don't really know this nigga like that. So now everything inside of this space was happening for a reason. End up losing my place, end up being out on the street, homeless, staying in the hotel room or whatever. And then everything that I tried to do in that space to resituate myself or come back up to come back up in that space. I was trying to get a new place and all of this and save up money and saved up money, end up getting money got lost or stolen and all this other shit. All of these things were happening inside of this space because I was still trying to maintain and stay in this space. I was being told, now that I realize it and understand it, that space was no longer beneficial to me. Because in that space, I started learning aspects of myself and I started saying that I wanted to do better. I started saying that I wanted to do better. I wanted to get better. I wanted to advance in my career and do all of these things. So naturally, the space basically released me from it. Everything that built that scape, that environment, was based on me avoiding things. So the moment that I was sitting here saying I'm no longer want to avoid things, I want to get myself better, manifesting unconsciously, I knew the root of the source was I had to go back home and deal with those issues, that original reason that I went out there. The original reason that I went out there. So when I came back home, started dealing with those aspects, things got better. Things got better. Things changed. Everything, I was doing better. But then that instinct kicked in again to survive, to be accepted. The wounds came back up again, and I started doing the same shit I was doing all over again. Same shit, different day. I called myself changing the path and doing some different shit, but I was ultimately moving at the same frequency. So the same line of events, even though I got further out, the same line of events came up and hit me on the head. I was like, nigga, something got to change. Did it again. The last cycle of it happening, that was me accepting my shadows. Last relationship, that relationship at that time, accepted shadows, started accepting a lot of aspects, started dealing with mother wounds, started dealing with those things. And I still had roots of expectancy. I was like, okay, if I deal with it, then I can keep this. I can deal with it. I can keep that. Deal with that. No. That was the death of Lil Charlie, Lil Carlos. That was the death of that nigga. That nigga had to die. That nigga really had to die. That all those identities had to die. All those identities had to be burnt and burned away. All those filters, all those identities had to be burnt away. Then I started going through my process of becoming what I am now. The entire war that I was going through, the entire internal conflicts that you're going through, this rocky ass path that you're going through, you need that shit in order for you to become your authentic self. The longer that you avoid it, the harder that it seems to become. Because when you really accept the deaths and you know death in the transition is needed, then things start to change. Things actually start to fall into place. You're on the path. You're not concentrating on the results anymore. Then you actually start to integrate with your shadow. There's multiple integrations. There's multiple levels of enlightenment. There's multiple integrations. You got multiple shadows that you're going to integrate with. depending on your trauma, the traumas that you went through. The shadow of your father, the shadow of not having a father, or what you would do if you had a father. That's going to be a shadow that you will integrate with. The shadow of your mother, or the shadow of you not having a mother, or the shadow of the sexual assaults or whatever happened. Those are shadows that you're going to integrate with. Every one of these shadows are leading you into your true self. The shadows, all of these shadows are the shadows when we think about the haunting of your inner child. All of these shadows are haunting your inner child. All of these shadows have taken on an identity in your life. All of these shadows are fragmented and taking the identities inside of your life. That's why it gets so hard the relationship. That's why this is why it gets so hard on the surface to get out of that relationship that is abusive, because you're vibrating from the frequency of the abuse. And if you're looking at when your mom went away and you saw it from a space you didn't understand, the shame, the insecurities, the doubts that your mother had that brought her into the space that she was in when she raised you, through this sense of bitterness. If you don't understand what the emotion of bitterness teaches you, then you're not going to be able to understand that aspect of that shadow. If you don't look at the multiple disappointments, you don't understand what disappointment as an emotion. It only represents that you are stuck in the past. There is an aspect of your past that you are stuck in and you're not dealing with. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read them off real quick. I made the post, but now I'm gonna do the what's it called. Go to my notes. Give me y'all some notes to understand these aspects. Go out of that. Slide over. Go to photos. Go to my pages. All right, cool. Yeah. Listening to your emotions. Bitterness shows us where you need to heal, where you're still holding on to judgments on others and yourself. Resentment shows you that you are living in the past and not allowing the present to be as it is. Discomfort shows you that you need to pay attention right now to what is happening, because you are being given an opportunity to change, to do something different than how you typically do it. Anger shows you that you are passionate, that shows you that what you are passionate about, where your boundaries are, and what your beliefs, but in that, your beliefs need to change about the world. Disappointment. This is what disappointment is. It shows you that you are tired of something, that you did not give empathy to something that you still care about it. That means there's still an aspect within you that still keeps you in that polarity of that caring for it. And when we think about disappointment, it's like the disappointment of how your mother treated you or how your father treated you. In this disappointment, you're still holding on to it. You still care about that identity that you're still trying to maintain. Guilt helps us understand that the person that you do not want to be. It gives you an opportunity to forgive yourself in order to move on. Shame. It shows you that you are internalizing other people's beliefs about you and should be who you are. And that's who you need to reconnect with yourself. Sadness. It shows us the depth of your feelings, the depth of your care for others in this world. Everything gives you an aspect that to learn about yourself. When we come into those aspects, it's like, what are you still holding? What are you still holding a disappointment over? Why are you disappointed? We have to go through these processes of these experiences, of these internal conflicts. The more we understand these internal conflicts, the less the external conflicts have any power over you. Because the only reason that the external conflict or the external program or the agenda has root over you, or it can control you or keep you held to a certain aspect, is because it's something based inside of you corresponding in order for you to deal with it. It's time to deal with those things. Now you're noticing that you have no choice but to deal with those things, to have that conversation with yourself, to find that space that you need to sit in, to start listening to yourself, to learn, and stop listening to yourself to react. So many times we get stuck in that space of listening to ourselves to react. So all we doing is listening to that old memory that keeps playing in our mind about what somebody did to us back in the past, and we're saying that that's never going to happen to me again. So now we become overly aggressive in certain spaces, so it never happens to us again. But you got to remember, you're stuck in a polarity. So where you are overly aggressive at, you're going to be submissive in other spaces. So now you look at your relationships differently. You become overly aggressive in your relationship, but now you're very passive. Now you're in that passive approach or that overly submissive approach to friends, family, and other elements. But it's time for you to become aggressive in your healing and your saying no and adjusting your standards. And I guarantee that this is going to change the perception of this. Now the relationship makes sense. Now what they said, you ain't going to be triggered by. If somebody says, yo, your mother is very narcissistic, or your mother is very aggressive, or your mother, they're only going to say things from a space, and it doesn't matter if they're saying it based on to hurt you or to make you feel some type of way. You're learning to see things as they are. Some people have a very isolated complex that reflects your isolation complex. You're isolated in somewhere. So when you get into a relationship, and the motherfucker that you with is very possessive, very isolating, wanting to isolate you away from everybody, what are they isolating you away from? Why are they doing it? Learning why is it bothering you? Because the only way that you can even be in that space, to be on that frequency, to be attached to that, for that to be a part of a narrative or a part of your storyline, is because inside of yourself, you're doing the isolation to yourself. Inside of yourself, you're being possessive about something. You're holding on to something that you need to let go of. And they're only the physical representation to show you what it looks like so you can face it. So many times I was in so many different spaces. Like, I remember having like this extra possessive chick. She was possessive as shit. Possessive as fuck. I'm like, why are you so possessive? She was like, I give you everything that you need. You don't need anything from anybody else. But I remember really sitting down. I remember we sat down and had a conversation one time, and I was like, why are you the way that you are? What is it really? What are you scared of? It was one of those teaching moments, like, what are you scared of? And then she gave me her background. She gave me the background story. I was like, damn. I was like, and at this point, not even realize she gave me this background story through this high point of emotion, me not knowing how to cultivate it. The only thing that I could say, because I was seeing myself in that space, I was seeing myself. So all I could say was, I would never do any of these things to you. I was having a conversation with my inner child. That's all I was doing. Having a conversation with my inner child. But the thing was, I was expecting something to happen differently. I was expecting, just because I said these things based on my level of expectancy, that things would change. Things didn't change. Things got dormant for a while. Her primary focus was still on me because she was still acting through that emotional seat. She wasn't dealing with the things. She just found in that space, it was another way for her to hide in the space, hide in the light. I became the light within that space because I acknowledge those aspects of myself. Some people are not ready to deal with their aspects of the light that they need to deal with. You got to be okay with that. You're trying to maintain this image, or I was trying to be the best. I know people did not get the best version of me. I know they didn't. I know motherfuckers did not get the best version of me. And I had to accept that they did not get the best version of me because I didn't know the best version of my damn self. So now when I'm in the space where I'm at now, I'm the best version of me for me. I had to understand that I was not going to be the best version. It had to be primarily for myself. It cannot be for others primarily. They came secondary. This is how you start understanding the aspects of every relationship. And why you saying that nigga selfish? That motherfucker is possessive. That motherfucker take ownership. You do the same shit. You're just doing it in a different way. You're there to learn how you do it. Why does it bother you? I would never do that because I would never want anybody to go through what I went through. Because I went through a time in my life based in my childhood where I was neglected. So now, maybe I'm projecting from a space of neglect, never for others to be neglected. I want to be accepted so I don't feel neglected. And then you start taking those layers down. You know when you need to take time by yourself. You know you might need to take that time by yourself. Even if you're in a relationship, you might need to take time to yourself. You need time to reevaluate yourself. The main goal of you going into a space is you are going to be in that space learning how to become the best version of yourself. So now you can understand why if a motherfucker cheated on you, I was being everything for them. Where were you being it from? Where were you saying it from? Where were you speaking it from? Why does that friendship hold? Why are you holding on to this friendship when every time that you have a conversation with other people, it's about that person? Y'all talking about yourselves. Most motherfuckers that gossip and talk about everybody else, they're only talking about themselves. You talking about another person, you're just projecting your light into that space so you're not looking at the aspects of yourself. That's why when you got that, every time the universe bring that super hard motherfucker to come into your space and start hitting your ass with the shit that you've been saying about everybody else and making you starting to second guess your damn whole life and your whole existence, that person was put there for a reason. But you'll avoid that person. I don't like the way, man, they always thinking this, that they didn't think any of that shit. Even if they did think any of that shit, it don't matter. It's the fact that you absorbed it. The only way you can absorb it if it's actually a part of you. You got to get out of that projection aspect of your identity and the way that you're doing things in that space is, everybody going, no, it's not the same fucking way. Everybody around you got a different addiction or has a different way of coping with their trauma. And because you're not doing that, you think that you're okay. But you really got to look at your space. Remember the different levels of addiction. Remember the different levels of all addiction is based on not taking accountability for yourself, not taking responsibility. So the moment that motherfuckers, give you a nice example. I remember when I was excited as shit to not be on probation. I remember being excited as shit. I'm not on probation anymore. I can wild the fuck out. I didn't learn the lessons while I was on probation. Because all I was looking at is when I'm off probation, I'm going to go back to doing exactly what I did the first time. Overdid it. Overdid the shit. Overdid it. Just because I learned how to avoid some shit, I thought that I mastered some shit. Shit came back even worse. You coming right back through the cycle going even worse, wanting some shit to work. That war, that you blaming everything on everybody else. Motherfuckers mad right now at the PPP loans, knowing that shit was fraud. Even if you let somebody else fill out your paperwork, you know you didn't have no fucking, you never read it. All you thought was like, ooh, free money, and you got it. That's the same, using the PPP loan is the same way that you have now been creating your identity, and your identity don't work. You're getting exposed for it. All of this shit that you said you had based on this identity, now you're getting exposed to it, and now you don't want to deal with it. You want to steadily blame something else outside of you for the shit that you need to deal with. Even if you go to the extent and say, because we were slaves, we had this, and we had the Wall Street, and we had this, and we did all of these things. And then they came in and they did this, and they did this, and they did this. All you did was put another subconscious plug into your memory that you're going to pull into every time you think about doing something great. So now the challenge of your greatness is based on somebody else. The whole challenge of you becoming great, you tapping into yourself, you being your true self, is based on somebody else. Your whole fucking story is now based on somebody else. Staying there. If I do my internal work, I remember when I first started doing my internal work, one of my biggest worries was, what's my family going to think? What are my friends going to think? What are the people that were there for me? So guess what was being exposed? I had to learn the reasons that they were there for me. I had to learn the reasons that they were there. Why were they put in that position? And most of the times when I put them in those positions, it was for some external bullshit any fucking way. I needed an escape. They needed an escape. Ooh, we can escape together. But when it really got serious and I was like, started dealing with my shit and then really started speaking about it, the things that I was dealing with and really bringing it to the surface, they felt like they were being attacked. Oh, you think you better because you dealt with that, da-da-da-da? And then I would feel some type of way. I would revert. More of my wound would be exposed. Because that's all you're doing is exposing the wound. You need some of these people. You need every motherfucker to come in your life there for a reason. They're helping you expose that wound. They're helping you peel back the layers and see how deep that wound goes. The moment that you sit there and think that you've gotten to the certain point and you really know you haven't, you know there's some more back there, and you thought you got just enough so you can coast. Most of us want to get just enough so we can coast. That's the whole paradigm when you're looking at motherfuckers that are the spiritual community and falling into the fads and falling into the trends of what it is to be spiritual. That's all that they're doing. I fell into it. As long as I do this, I ain't got to deal with my shit because that's there now. So they reach out for it and they need that to happen next. The same way your grandmother or your mother been going to church or now is in a home church or whatever church it is, been going to that same church for 30 years, it ain't learned anything. She's still doing the same shit that she did she's still doing it. She's still acting out the same patterns that she acted out when you lived with her. She's still doing the same fucking shit. She's still doing the same damn shit. The question is, why are you bothered by it? Why are you bothered by it? Because she's a reflection of your fucking pattern. She's a reflection of your pattern. You mad because you got a homegirl or a homeboy that always stays fucked up and you don't know why they stay fucked up. That it bothers you. Why does it bother you? Because in some way, shape, and form in correspondence, you are doing the same exact thing. Remember, if you can see it, you're on that frequency. It don't matter how much you do or how little you do. It's just the simple fact that you're within the polarities of doing something in similar fashion. Your addiction corresponds to their addiction. Their way to escape is your way that you're escaping. Their way to drink their problems away is the same way you work all the fucking time. Or you working all the time, or you over there at the damn casino all the damn time, or you wishing that your number fall. It's the same reason they got their addiction. They're hoping when they go out based in that, because you thinking, if you can't accept me at my worst, you can't accept me at my best. Get that bullshit off the fucking table. Stop telling yourself that bullshit. If you can't accept yourself at your worst and learn yourself at your fucking worst, of course, everybody around you is going to be on that same fucking frequency with you. And all y'all going to do the same exact shit. All in their own different way. Whether it's your friend that's been in the damn relationship for up 10 years and you keep asking them why the fuck they don't leave. The only reason you can react to it is because there's something that you won't leave. But the only thing that you use based on identity is, I'm single, girl, and I don't give a fuck. I'm single, dude. I don't deal with that shit. They're in it, reflecting to you what you need to deal with. Your friend, good example. 1 second, let me go pee. Your friend, your that homegirl that keep getting knocked upside the head. She in an abusive relationship. That homeboy, he in an abusive relationship. That chick, every chick he get with, keep using it for his money. You're being shown the masculine and the feminine aspects. I can guarantee you the reason that you sympathize with your homegirl, that friend, that family member that's abused, is because you see yourself in your homegirl, your friend, that person. So on the other end, when you're looking at their boyfriend, you're looking at their girl, you see the aspects of your mother, the aspects of the person that abused you, the trauma that you're seeing them in that person. So you're going to project all of your thoughts and feelings onto that person. And if you're not going to deal with it, you be like, that's why I'm single. All the way to the point, girl, when are you going to leave? But we've all read that narrative. They won't leave until they're ready. It's going to get very, very cold. With motherfuckers like, that's cold as hell when you say that shit. But Think about it like this. If you're always there to pick up the pieces, and they're always there, if you're always there for them to run to you, and you always provide emotion, you always invest your emotions into it, why would they need to leave? Think about it. Why would they need to leave? If I'm in a whole ass abusive relationship and I got people around me that I know I can go to their fucking house and stay for a couple of days to shorty cool the fuck down, why the fuck would I need to leave? I can keep making excuses. You got to stop investing your emotions into it and start becoming that consultant. Say what you need to say. Say what's really on your heart and on your chest. As you start doing that, I guarantee you start dealing with your own shit. You almost always start dealing with your own shit. I know, because I was in those positions. I remember motherfuckers around me. This one chick, she get abused every fucking relationship that she was in. And she was like around my homegirls. And I remember one time I was like, I told one of my homegirls, I was like, she's not going to leave. She's not going to leave that situation. She was like, but why isn't she? Man, she's so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, she don't know that. And she won't learn that until you guys tell her that. You guys can tell her all this other stuff. It's his fault, all this shit. But in reality, it's as much her fault as his fault. One of my homegirls, she listening to me. One of they bootleg ass friends was like, you can't be, it ain't got nothing to do with her. It's everything to do with him. I was like, it wouldn't even exist if she wasn't part of it. You got to heal these aspects of yourself so you stop becoming the correspondence to their trauma. When you heal these aspects of yourself, you stop becoming the correspondence to their trauma. I remember when I went through that phase when I'm coming into my consciousness and I'm speaking a certain way and I'm moving a certain fucking way and I'm open up a certain way. And because I still had those internal wounds, so I was projecting, sounded strong as fuck. But then it was always like the same damn narrative. If I said it to a chick, oh my God, I'm in love with you. No, bitch, you infatuated. There's a difference. You infatuated. You infatuated. And I fell into the line of the infatuation and fell into the relationship and was in the relationship. But when they saw my daily works and my daily disciplines, they didn't like that shit. They were like, nigga, you work all the time. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's the biggest aspect. That's one of the deepest aspects of it. You got to accept that you pulling that into yourself. You keep pulling in different aspects of yourself to learn yourself. But with that emotional attachment, you like, ooh, this is my friend because we share similar experiences. We share similar traumas. So we're cool. We're together. We're going to be buddies to the end. Yay. But what happens when you start dealing with your problems? Mm-hmm. That's the key. The key is being able to take this, as I'm always so adamant about saying, you got to take the knowledge that you take in ain't gonna do shit until you start applying it. You don't apply it to the external because the external changes based on the internal. Yeah, the internal changes based on the external perception changes based on the internal work. If I don't do my internal work, then my external doesn't change. When I sit here and tell you, give you an example, I go to the gym. There's a church beside my gym. The only way that I notice or remember that there's a church next to my gym is I have to tell myself there's a church next to my gym. There's a McDonald's up the street. I don't eat McDonald's anymore. I have to literally tell myself there's a McDonald's up the street. That's how there's a McDonald's up the street. When you're doing your internal work, most of the shit that you are hung up on disappears. That includes the individuals in your life. I have noticed that is one of the most deepest aspects that people do not deal with. That shit was a mirage based on your pride. That relationship with the kids was a mirage based on your pride. So you could see what you did in what you had to experience. Because the moment that you deal with the aspects that you need to deal with, that shit literally disappears. I had a conversation with my man like a couple of months ago. It was like, you notice like on your timeline, it just in your scape, like once you start, when you doing your work, you notice certain motherfuckers disappear and you don't even like, and it's not even like a longing feeling to like, nigga, maybe I need to reach out. It's like legit, they disappear and they're still there. Like you can see that nigga across the street. You see this nigga seeing you. You see this nigga seeing you. You see shorty looking at you. But because you ain't on that frequency anymore, y'all pass right by each other. Don't even you simply say what's up, hey, what up, and you keep going. There's no you because they are on a different frequency. They are on a different level. You have to accept that you are evolving. You went into when you go into that tree and you start acknowledging these things, those things that start coming up at first, everything, I'll tell everybody this with manifestations, intentions, all of that. The things that come up first are the things that must be dealt with to clear the path. You have to clear your path. You got to remove that clutter. You got to remove that bullshit that you got in your life that you've been holding on to keep yourself in that certain behavior. Because it's only going to irritate you. It's only going to make you mad. It's only going to expose the emotions. So you naturally clearing your path. This is why I tell the spiritual path is not a Summer's Eve commercial. It's more like Death Race. It's more like Resident Evil Apocalypse. It's more like what's the new one? The new one with Batista in it. It's more like that. And you're clearing your path. This shit ain't supposed to be pretty because your trauma wasn't pretty. You're going back into yourself. Your trauma wasn't pretty. You want to hold on to all the good aspects, all the good things that happen to you in your life. You gotta get the lessons. All that exists was the lesson. The emotions created that framework for the conduit, and the behaviors gave it a face. The behavior gave it a face for you to be able to, I like the way it looks. This is the trick. Let me give you the trick part about your trauma. Yeah, Army of the Dead. I knew everybody was going to die in that movie. I knew everybody was going to die in that movie when I first, I was like, yep, everybody about to die. In the Pacified Negroes, I knew the black guy was going to make it on the plane. I like, black guy going to live all the way to the end. Guess what? Guess what's going to happen? The black guy going to live, and that nigga going to get infected too. Guaranteed. Letting you know you can't escape your bullshit. You can't escape with the physical attachments. If you looked at the end of that movie and you saw that nigga on the plane and that nigga had the money and the nigga thought he was living his life, all that gave me the thought like, I cannot cling to the physical attachments or I'm going to stay infected. Little decode for you. But going into the space with yourself, As you're learning these aspects, as you're shifting through these aspects, that shit gotta go away. You gotta understand what it is first, or it's not gonna leave. It's gonna keep repeating itself. It's only gonna keep repeating itself until you learn the reason it was present. You learn its presence. Or else you're gonna be sitting here like the Skeksis off the Dark fucking Crystal, depending on the essence of others to keep you existing. It's time to grow. It's time to heal. It's time to really understand these aspects of yourself. It's time to really tap in and understand these aspects of yourself and really start doing your work. That's your internal war. Them many internal battles you got going on inside of you, and the projection and correspondences outside of you to keep you feeding that aspect, feeding this space. Remember the story of like the Titans crumbled up, boom, and then the souls, Sophia crumbled up and sprinkled all the. That was you being sprinkled down here. That's the same story, you being sprinkled down here to go through your path, to go through your growth. Every one of these stories is on the same exact synonymous tip. Every time you want to, let's go through Norse mythology. You looking at the Loki, the trickster, and you looking at the all of these other aspects. All of these are aspects of you. Your emotional aspects in the feminine, your emotional aspects, or the knowledge or the standard building aspects of the identity of the masculine. All of it is you. When I tell you that I haven't had any second of thought about white people, except for like every time I see it, I see them reverting back. Like I made a post in the group the other day about white people with dreads and talking about they washing themselves. I was like, they were working right back to their cave antics. They doing it. They right on time. Right on time. That's what they supposed to be doing. Everything's reverting back to what it needs to be. Everything's reverting back. The last grab is vaccinations and you worried about a chip. Why are you worried about a chip when you got a whole location device in your hand 90% of the day? That shit was hilarious. You got a whole tracking device in your hand most of your damn day. Yeah, that's a picture of me on my screen. You worried about this grandmaster plan, and if they really had the grandmaster plan, you think they would have did it already? They gonna clone us and put our DNA and do some get out shit to us. They would have did it already. Why wait? Why wait? If I got the ability to synthesize your consciousness and put it into something, that's not for you. That is for them. So they can go back and watch the first Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger when that bitch showed her eyes. Yeah, I've died like each one of these dots represents the time that you went through the process. That's not for you. That's for them. In order for it to exist, they need you to stay in your emotional imbalance so it can exist, so they can keep doing, so they can keep pulling. That's the only ability that they have. Keep you emotional, keep you emotionally imbalanced, because once I started dealing with my internal work and going really, really deep, once I went into my hell, once I went into my pits of hell and went through my shadows, that's another good one. Once I went into my shadows and started dealing with myself, none of that shit really existed. Now I can see it on the news or I see it happening. I'm aware of it. but I know it's not. I know it's not something that is directly correlated to. I can't do anything to it until I'm at a certain level anyway. I had to stop being distracted by that so I can do what I'm doing over here. Because as long as I'm looking over here, I can't maintain what's going on over here. I can't become the example. I can't build. I can't teach. I can't counsel. I can't do these other aspects. So I can't become the example and become the, I cannot take the position of the authority with my purpose for when people align and wake up and they say, "Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready." I have to destroy what was put before. That old paradigm, the fear narrative, the debating back and forth, the yelling out and being militant, selling my emotions to the highest bidder, because that's what these motherfuckers are doing. Motherfuckers run around and gas you and tell you that you is a goddess. Not saying that you're not a goddess, not saying that you are a queen, but they're giving it to you based on an identity or a title. But how have you learned that title? How have you learned to synthesize that is you at all times? It's just not when, I'm gonna keep my crown on and I'm Papa Lucifer at all times. The authenticity in me is Papa Lucifer at all times. There is no, I'll be Carlos this day and I'll be Papa Lucifer this day. I'm Papa Lucifer at all times. So the next level is to build the light bodies through the multiple streams that project as I need to speak as I speak through each bodies. Use physical representation, Friday night lectures every Friday. Use every Tuesday, God Hour podcast. Monday through Thursday, y'all see me drop a live video with some helpful tips in it. Wednesday, I create my representations of me. I create the multitude of representations of me that are all of me. It's not based on an identity complex where I got to maintain this identity, maintain this identity, maintain this identity. There's no maintaining the identities anymore. There are no identities. My intuition is not based in survival. My intuition is now based in the building to sustain peace, to sustain that clarity, to keep going forward. So now my intuition challenges me to go further into the ethers, further into the astral, further into those spaces. So when I cycle back down in that physical representation of cycling my energy, it's always to now, it's only based on I can't until I've dealt with it inside of myself or I've seen that aspect and dealt with it. So now when my energy comes down here, it naturally removes shit. It doesn't keep shit here. It destroys shit. I'm on my Megatron shit. None of this shit that's down here can be maintained because of what it was created for. It was created as a learning zone. That learning aspect, your learning center, you're becoming the warrior in the garden, so to speak. Yes. Much gratitude. As you evolve and you're applying, you go to that, you're in that next space. If you go back and look at the first lectures all the way up to the lectures now, it's always been the same premise. It's always been the same. It's always been in the same process of thought. Expose, get into the shadow, get into the depths, knock into that work, get into that depth with yourself. So naturally, as I progress, that's the example of the progression as you come into the higher spaces. Becoming comfortable in your seat of your authentic self or your authority with yourself. The more that you start doing that, you start noticing that the connection starts to happen naturally. Everybody down here in the spiritual complex, still based in the religious aspect, the fundamentals, they're thinking external before internal. So it becomes a trend. Let me go put this wire on top of my head. Let me go put this in my body. Let me go do this. Let me go do this. If I do this, then I can keep avoiding. Because that's honestly what motherfuckers are doing. If I do this, then I'm avoiding some shit. I can still avoid myself. If I accept what that motherfucker said, I can keep avoiding the shit that I need to deal with. If I accept that way of life, then I can keep avoiding the shit I need to avoid with. It's like, use one of the easiest examples that I can use is becoming vegan. You want to be vegan. I'm vegan by the decision because it makes me I'm more efficient as plant-based, but it does not cut me off from, like, Monday I ordered pizza. We had pizza, and the pizza is now sitting on the altar because my grandmother loved pizza. My grandmother always loved Domino's. My aunts always loved Domino's and chocolate chip cookies, cheese sticks and shit. That's what's on the altar now. I do not cut myself off from the experience of giving that divine honor to my people, to what came before me. You're changing that aspect of yourself so that now when you go into these spaces, it's not based on the old paradigm or the old frequency or the old train of thought that you were in. You don't want to have the old train of thought. You don't want to think the same way. You don't want to be thinking the same way you're thinking this year, next year. You don't want to be sitting. Put it like this. Do you see yourself being 60 plus years old, still talking about what you hear most motherfuckers debating about? Because that is the path that most motherfuckers are on because they're not dealing with their internal aspects. How long are you going to blame everything on everyone else before you sit down with yourself? How long you gonna blame everything on everybody else before dealing with yourself? Because that's all ultimately that you're doing. Start dealing with yourself, shit changes, perception changes. I promise you that perceptions change. Shit changes when you start doing that internal work. When I came into the space and said I was a king, I had to realize that was internally triggering everything that I surveyed as based in being the royalty and making the decrees to heal myself. Took me a long time to realize that shit. Once I got into that aspect, started surveying what I was dealing with, then the God title came naturally. I am the creator. I am the creator or the expounder of things into the space that I survey. Once I mastered that aptitude and went through that process, then I could accept my title as the alchemist. I was only coming back into myself. I became the alchemist. I was the one that transmuted all of the stuff that came into the space, accepting the entire spectrum. Got a little deeper, got deeper into my darkness, because those are layers before darkness. You still want to be a king and a queen and a god, an alchemist. Alchemists still work in the light. You okay? The alchemist still works within the light and bringing from the darkness. Then I slipped into that occult title, being the occultist, expounding upon the aspects of the hidden, understanding what the hidden was, understanding the mythos and what the mythos and the philosophies were actually telling my ass about my own damn self. My pops and his Oedipus complex and what it resulted to. My mother and her complexes and what they amounted to and how they went to me. And then it took me into my Titan. It took me into my ancient aspect, took me into my shamanist aspect. Multiple deaths had to happen before me become the shaman. The master of this information. Being able to go back and forth, to and fro, to and fro, to and fro, to come into that space. You got to do that work. You got to come into this space, and it's time to learn yourself. It's time to learn. You're always going to be learning because there's always something new to master. I will never ever again say that I'm grown. I will never say it's simplicity in being. It's so much simplicity in growth in being the inner child. So much simplicity. It's so beautiful. It's so great. So grand. It's that literal nirvanic feeling of being able to wake up and I'm building something and I know what I'm building, the purpose of what I'm building it for, why you sitting in that, why I'm building that shit for, so I don't have to submit to things that are lower than me anymore. I know motherfuckers gonna be mad at me. I don't like the way he changed. I don't like the way your weave is lopsided. How about that? That nigga an asshole. So be it. That's your perception of me. You think I'm gonna let one person? You think I'm gonna let one person? You think I'm gonna let like 9 million people think I'm an asshole? People think I'm an asshole based on a projection, but they can't tell me why. It's time to change. You know what we do around this period of the time. It's your first time in. This is our period when we're doing question and answer. Yeah, answer and question period. Ask your question. It don't have to be about the topic that we got into tonight. It can be something that's been on your chest that you needed to get off and you needed some insight on, some clarity on. And I will provide some. If I can't provide the direct answer, I can provide you to the direction of it. But yeah, this is our question and answer period. Question, throw it up in the comments. I'm gonna do a collective reading. Do a nice little collective reading. I like doing the collective reading at the end to kind of synthesize that energy. It's something similar to what I do in sessions. In sessions with me, our sessions start with a guided meditation about what we're going to tackle that day. We're going to bring that down. We bring that to the surface. We build on that. And then we end with that guided meditation to help lock it in till the next session. So when I do a reading at the end, it's sort of that same premise. But while you guys are formulating your questions that you want to ask, go to the bathroom one more time. As I pulled my hair back just now, I had like the wildest fucking thought because I was remembering with the thing about the if you clone yourself shit. I don't know why that came in. But like dealing with your former associates, I reacted to situations in the worst way. I'm tired of repeating this cycle. How can I learn to control my emotions when being provoked? Read that one more time. Read it one more time. Dealing with former associates, I reacted to situations in the worst way. I'm tired of repeating this cycle. How can I learn to control my emotions when being provoked? The easiest way is to go through. So when you're being provoked, when we're being provoked in certain emotional escapes, it's based on the decline. So if it's a high state of emotion every time you deal with somebody, like there's a high level of emotion in that space or whatever to that space, that's showing you that that cycle's at a decline. How we assess the space is how we assess the space and move forward. That's how we now know how to move forward. For some situations, I remember like for myself, dealing with certain people, like dealing with people in general. And certain people were like this, making me inherently angry. The first thing I had to understand was, why are they bothering me? And I had to get to the root within inside of myself of why this person is bothering me based on what they're doing, what they're saying. It wasn't what they're saying. It wasn't what they were doing. I had to remove those things. It wasn't what they were saying, wasn't what they were doing, wasn't how they looked. It wasn't the action. I had to remove those aspects and really get to the core of why it bothered me. So that provoking aspect is needed because conflict is necessary. Conflict is natural. You need conflict. Conflict lets you know that you need to grow. Without conflict, then how do you know you need to grow? So sitting in that space, getting provoked, you have to ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I here? What is the need for this? Is it really a need? Is it based on the aspect of my form, like the aspects of my old self? Are they responding based in projection? Because 9 times out of 10, if you keep going through a cycle and you keep reacting the same exact way, it's because you're falling to the projection and you're absorbing something. You're absorbing something. You're still looking at it through a certain filter or a certain way. You're still looking at it for some people, for some of us, when we're looking at people, especially when we're coming to our healing work and we're doing our healing work and we're advancing and we're still finding this sense of community, wanting to build ourselves in this sense of community with people and have people around us. It's like we're still using an outdated program. A lot of times we keep getting provoked because we're using an outdated program based on how we used to move, based on how we used to used to exist in that space. That program no longer works. That's why you get angry. That's why you get provoked. You start acting out. You're acting out as it is also going deeper. It's also aspects of your inner child giving you a lesson. So the best way to deal with it is to sit with yourself and ask yourself, why did you respond the way you responded? Why did you react the way you reacted? What was it rooted in? Get to really understand the emotions of why you were in that space to master that emotion. Because sometimes for us, you need that spark of anger or that spark of acting out in a certain way because it sets the space or the precedent for the space of what you're about to do next. Some people don't understand anything but that. That's one of the biggest things for a lot of people. Some people don't understand anything but that. Some people are just projecting. You have to become the opposite. Basically, you're becoming the opposite. Because their perception is going to project whatever it is anyway. You got to become the opposite. I remember the first time I'll use an example. I remember the first time for myself, Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that balance. Yeah, as a healer, it's such it's such a delicate balance for us when we're as healers. It's such a delicate balance because you still want to be there, but at the same time, it's like I need to protect my energy. It's that delicate balance. Your energy, your protection of your energy is primary. Your protection of your energy is primary. The cultivation of your energy is primary. The aptitude of you becoming the best you is primary. In that process of us becoming that primary healer in that source, this is when we have to learn our standards must change in order to create the new boundaries. That means the way we're looking at ourselves and assessing ourselves and pausing, that pause method, that's going to help me be able to reset my standard. And then that also, it sets the aptitude of being able to set that space. That way, if they come into the space, that way when motherfuckers come into the space, because motherfuckers are evasive by nature because of their trauma, the events that happen in their life. They're very evasive. They look for that escape aspect. So you sitting in that space with yourself. I remember earlier on in my healing journey, I thought I wanted to heal everybody. Everybody that was open and wanted to be healed, I was going to heal everybody. But then I started realizing that me being that open without setting boundaries for myself or really getting myself cultivated for myself, it always left the door open for the riffraff to slide in to come and siphon energy. They weren't ready to deal with some shit. They siphoned some energy from me and go back to what they were doing. Whether it was earlier on with readings, earlier on with like just providing certain information, I had to create a space. I had to create that space for that to come through. I had to set the parameters of that space for that to come through. And for a lot of people, like once you create these once you create these aspects, it naturally flows based on you and maintaining your standard, that balance, that peace, what you need to be doing, how you're setting the tone for yourself. At that same time, as you start doing that, you're going to start moving more and more into the direction of where you're supposed to be. You're going to be moving more and more directly into the direction of you, what you need to be doing, what I like, because I remember the first time sitting there wanting to heal everybody and provide everybody some consultations and all that shit. And then I was like, and from that space, the craziest thing about it in the physical sense is because I wasn't setting no precedents or no prices because I didn't want to set a price because I still was dealing with a couple little wounds and issues that I wasn't dealing with. These things came to the surface. But when I set the tone of value, of study, of learning, the prices became natural in this sense. So when I set the prices and I set the tone and I set my standards, wrote up that new contract, because I handled the old contract, wrote up that new contract. This, and this is what I accept. This is what I accept. This is what keeps me in my balance. This is what keeps me in my peace. If you are not in agreement and acceptance of these aspects, then we can't do business. We can't do no work. Regardless, there's motherfuckers right now that still do not like me. Okay. This is based on my peace. This is based on my peace. This is based on my balance. This is based on me trying to build a space that's for the ones that are ready to come into. Those old associates, I'm gonna pull a couple cards. Those old associates, they got to a certain point, they're not ready to go to the next point. That irritation is showing you that it's time for you to expand and it's time for you to take yourself to your next point. Which is pulled up in that, 3 of Cups. Three of Cups represents the old circles. If we look right here, this cup is being held up. This cup is upside down. This cup being held behind the back. When we look at the Three of Cups, it's telling that it's time to assess your circle. You see how this motherfucker back here holding it behind his back? This person over here holding their cup close to themselves. You're the only one holding your cup up, ready to deliver. It's time to adjust that circle. Glad to read it for everybody. That Seven of Swords aspect just came up. Seven of Swords represents, the Seven of Swords goes up after the Six of Swords, and realizing that in the Six of Swords, it represents you putting the holes in your own boat. Like one of the 6 cards in this deck. It represents you're holding the tools of your fall or your rise. The Seven of Swords represents learning how to take those swords, those weapons that have been used against you, and learning how to maintain and learning how to hold yourself so you can actually cut those ties. This is the opportunity based through the Page of Swords. Moving forward, this is the opportunity to assess old ties, learn from the old ties, especially with this full moon in Gemini and everything changing. The moon and all the satellites in Gemini, the eclipse and all that shit. This is the opportunity for you to study the ties that have to be cut away. Which leads in to opening up to the new opportunities of your energy through the Ace of Swords, the Ace of Wands. This is a new opportunity to really focus in on your energy. But you can't focus in on your energy if you're not assessing the ties that you need to cut. If you're holding on to the old aspects that you need to set down. End of that cycle. As we look at this is that doorway into daath. Let's turn it upside down. The old ways that you used to express yourself, the old ways of expression, the old personalities, the old friendships, the old relationships. This is that doorway right here. It's time for you to dip in here. This is your new space. But it's going to take some uprooting. Once you go through that process, the opportunities of new abundances and new opening doors shall happen. But you got to go through the process. We are always in the right position. It is what we do with that position that sets the tone for if we grow or if we remain in the same damn bullshit. I don't know about you. I'm not trying to remain in the same bullshit. I'm not trying to be doing the same shit I did last year, this year. So I'm definitely not trying to take the same shit I did this year in the next year. It's time to deal with that war. It's time to deal with those conflicts. It's time to change that perception because it's going to make you an enemy. Every hero, we're going to close on that. Every hero that you've ever seen is dealing with their traumas coinciding with it. The only anti-hero, when you look at Venom, that motherfucker is integrated with his shadow and uses it to his advantage. Trying to integrate with your shadow and deal with it to your advantage. Sight, seeing, awareness, sight. It's time to tap into your sight. That's your intuition. Everything here based on you seeing is based on your instinct. It's time to become aware of your instincts your behaviors, your patterns, what you thought, start to go deeper so you can tap into that sight. That feels good. But as always, I desire you to be the best. I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best, to be great. If you're ready, that's your first sign. If you're ready, that's your first sign. What you gonna do with it? I love you. We love us. Ashe.